Good evening and welcome to Primetime News on TV1. For the news system, I'm Azra Hassan. Let's start off with a look at your headlines for tonight.
People are in favor of handing over the West Terminal to a foreign investor, says Minister Udaya Gammanpilla.
රට හදන සෞභාග්‍යයේ දැක්ම කියන ජනවරමට අනුකූලවයි බටහිර ජැටි විදේශ ආයෝජන සමග සංවර්ධනය කරන්නේ.
India says we would hope that Sri Lanka does not unilaterally decide on the ECT, as there is a tripartite agreement on it. Kimbula Aleguna, a suspect of the bomb attack that targeted former President Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumaratunga, arrested in Chennai. Cabinet grants approval for the cultivation of maize in 2,750 acres in the historic Rambakan Oya zone. Ranjan Ramanayake seeks solace from the Court of Appeal to secure his parliamentary seat. Colombo Stock Exchange drops to a record low.
On to your lead story now, co-cabinet spokesperson Minister Udaya Gammanpilla has said that India has not been informed about the government's stance on the East Container Terminal. A senior Indian source had told the Hindu newspaper that India hopes that Sri Lanka does not unilaterally decide on this matter, as there is a tripartite agreement on it.
According to a report published by the Hindu newspaper, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa's statement that the East Container Terminal's operation would be handled entirely by the Sri Lanka Ports Authority has not been communicated officially to India. The Indian High Commission in Colombo had responded to these remarks last evening. The High Commission had said that India expects the expeditious implementation of a trilateral memorandum of cooperation signed in 2019 on developing the East Container Terminal.
ඉන්දියන් මහා කොමසාරිස් කාර්යාලයේ නිවේදනයක් නිකුත් කරමින් ඊයේ සඳහන් කරනවා 2019 වසරේ මැයි මාසයේදී ශ්‍රී ලංකාව ඉන්දියාව ජපානය අතර අත්සන් කළ ත්‍රිපාක්ෂික එකඟතාවය අනුව කටයුතු කරන ලෙස රජයට දන්වලා තියෙනවා. මෙම ගිවිසුම අවලංගු කිරීම සම්බන්ධයෙන් කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලය යම්කිසි තීරණයකට එළඹුණාද නැද්ද?
එම ගිවිසුම අවලංගු කිරීම සම්බන්ධයෙන් තීන්දුවකට එළඹුණේ නැහැ. බොහොම පැහැදිලිවම අපි
We have not decided to terminate the agreement. India is a valuable nation that has friendly ties with us. We consider India to be an important factor in our geopolitics. At the same time, we have identified India as a country that lends us a helping hand. We can explain to them about the current situation of the country. I believe that India will understand this situation and act in a friendly manner.
පිට සමග මිත්‍රශීලීව කටයුතු කරයි කියලා.
The West Container Terminal was offered as an alternative to India, and that proposal was not received by Delhi. So has there been any preliminary conversation already on the possibility of the West Container Terminal?
As you know, this is a very sensitive diplomatic issue, and Sri Lankan government always takes steps to maintain the cordial relationship with the government of India. Government has commenced discussions with the Indian government. I don't think that this is the stage to disclose those details.
The Times of India today reported Sinnaya Gunasekaran alias Kimbula Aleguna, who is believed to be the main suspect in the bomb attack targeting former President Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumaratunga, had been arrested in Chennai. According to the report, Kimbula Aleguna was arrested with 4 others, including his son. The arrest had been set in motion by the Indian police after the suspect's associate Sunil Gamini alias Gemini Fonseca was arrested from a hideout in Bangalore in October last year. Indian media reported that all 5 suspects, including Kimbula Aleguna, had been taken into custody by the Q branch wing of the Tamil Nadu police based on information uncovered following the arrest of Gemini Fonseca. According to the Times of India newspaper, 4 people had been arrested from a hideout based on a confession of Kimbula Aleguna. The suspects who are under remand custody have been identified as LTTE shooter Kennedy alias Bumma, along with 3 individuals by the names of Dileepan, Vigneswara Perumal and Prabhakaran. The report published by the Times of India noted that the notorious Sri Lankan criminal Kimbula Aleguna had maintained links with the LTTE. Journalists questioned Minister of Public Security Sarath Veerasekara on whether there is a connection between Sri Lanka's decision on the East Container Terminal and the sudden arrest of Kimbula Aleguna in Chennai.
We have commenced discussions to extradite them into the country in the near future. Criminals will be arrested regardless of whether agreements are signed or not, so there is no connection.
Journalists also questioned the minister on the delay in arresting Pulastini Rajendran alias Sara, in connection to the 2019 April 21st attacks, citing that she is believed to have fled to India.
It is difficult to locate suspects, especially in countries such as India. Even this arrest is made after nearly 20 years. We have conveyed the necessary details through the Interpol.
The Indian police has arrested Kimbula Leguna out of the blue in Chennai 22 years after the bomb attack on Chandrika Kumaratunga. Sara Pulastini, who is linked to the April 21st attack, is believed to be in India, but they are unable to arrest her. The problem here is that the Indian police has been able to arrest Kimbula Leguna after several years, although he was in the country. We must draw the connection between this arrest and the intimidating statement issued last evening. We cannot rule out the absence of any connection between these incidents. What is being portrayed through these signals that are being released in the form of an intimidating statement and the arrest of a person involved in the assassination plot of a president? What is being portrayed through the signals issued by India's Raw Intelligence Unit and these contracted killers? When India is issuing intimidating statements, the government cannot pretend to ignore them. The government must announce its firm stance on this. India has threatened us. Therefore, the government must respond to it now.
The work to rule action commenced by port trade unions last Friday was called off today following the Cabinet's decision to retain ownership and fully operate the East Container Terminal of the Colombo port under the Sri Lanka Ports Authority. The Joint National Movement convened a media briefing after concluding the work to rule action.
We have more information, but we will not divulge them in this instance. We are somewhat satisfied today. Our only request from the government is, do not create any more issues such as this. All trade unions will unscrupulously pay attention to the ECT until it is completed. Certain acts of revenge took place, but those will not happen anymore. We will save our brothers who were transferred and have been interdicted.
Look at the manner in which our big brother India threatened us. India should mind its own affairs. We can develop our own nation.
There is a discourse over the West Terminal. Even the ECT is still under threat. Why can't we formulate laws that forbid the sale of assets? It should be included in the constitution. We need to remain united.
It has been proposed to start operations at the upcoming West Container Terminal of the Colombo port with the private investment of either India or Japan instead of handing over the East Container Terminal of the port.
The West Terminal does not possess any strategic importance. It is under President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's manifesto, which the people gave their mandate to, that this development will be carried out with foreign investment coming in from India and Japan.
ජැටිය විදේශ ආයෝජන සමග සංවර්ධනය කරන්නේ
අමිතුමනි දැන් බටහිර පරයන්ති සංවර්ධනය කිරීමට ආනි සමාගම සමගද ඉදිරියට ගෙන යන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ.
අමාත්‍ය මණ්ඩලයේ තීරණය කළේ
The cabinet decided to initiate a joint venture with two companies named by the governments of India and Japan. So the Indian and Japanese governments will decide what the companies are.
ජපන් ආණ්ඩුව
දැන් බටහිර පරයන්ති සංවර්ධනය කරනවා නම් පිටතට ලබා දෙන ආයෝජනයේ ප්‍රමාණය කොච්චරද ඒක 85ක් කියලා තමයි වාර්තා වෙන්නේ. රජයට 15ක් තබාගෙන කොපමණ මට්ටමකද මේ ෂෙයා එක බෙදිලා යන්නේ.
ඇත්තම අමාත්‍ය මණ්ඩලයේ අනුමත කළේ
The cabinet gave approval adhering to the same conditions that were present when private entities investing in the port in earlier occasions. The company that will invest, develop and manage the terminal will own 85% of the stake. The Sri Lanka Ports Authority will have a stake of 15%. The time period of the arrangement will be 35 years. The cabinet decided to hand this over based on equal conditions.
අමාත්‍ය මණ්ඩලයේ තීරණය කළේ
Religious groups, civic organizations and political parties backing the government have said that the government's proposal to develop the West Container Terminal has won the approval of the people.
The policy mentions that it would be developed with the assistance of the private sector. We have received the public mandate for this proposal. It doesn't matter whether it involves India or any other country. We will construct it and run its operations for 35 years before handing it over to the Sri Lanka Ports Authority. India might be unhappy about the East Container Terminal given its importance. Therefore, when an entity hoping to control the terminal loses that opportunity, it would cause disappointment. We will not give the Colombo port to India if there is a useful terminal. There is a group within the government that acted to bring disgrace to the current administration through the plot to sell off the port. Some individuals are in higher positions at the presidential secretariat. Large-scale companies are operating within the port and are part of this conspiracy. They prompted the government to sell off the port to the Adani Group to pave the way for their companies to enter into deals and acquire its ownership. I feel that the government has recorded a massive victory by defending the people's mandate after defeating the conspiracy that arose within the government itself.
ආණ්ඩුව ඇතුළෙම දියත් වෙච්ච උමනාව පරාජය කරලා ජනවරමේ අපේක්ෂා රකින්න හැකියවීම ආණ්ඩුවෙත් විශාල ජයග්‍රහණයක් කියලා.
ඇයි ඉන්දියාවට මම මේක දෙන්නේ? ඔව් ඒකෙදි මේක ඉන්දියාවයි මෙහෙම ඇත්ත වශයෙන්ම දැන් ජනාධිපතිතුමාට මැතිතුමා අපි මේක ඉන්දියාවට දෙන්නේ නැහැ කියලා. නෑ අපි වෙන්නේ නැහැ.
No, we did not ask them about it. We took to the streets amidst several problems to create awareness among the people, hoping to protect it from being sold. Therefore, this must be protected. We did not cross-question them on this.
The West Container Terminal must be developed. How the West Container Terminal must be developed has been formulated following discussions with experts at the port. Moves are afoot to give it away to companies in Japan and India.
ආයතනවලට දෙනවා කියන එකයි කියන්නේ. පැහැදිලිවම පුළුවන් ඒකට හේතුව
They can do that. That is because Mahinda Rajapaksa is a top-tier politician not just in Asia but across the world as well. When we waged war against terrorism, we carried out a humanitarian operation. We managed India in a very skilled manner at that time. There were three prominent individuals. This included the President, the Defence Secretary and Basil Rajapaksa. We are capable of managing this situation well if we act patiently instead of a hypocritical manner. The West Container Terminal has not been constructed. The President has incorporated matters surrounding this in his policy. This clearly outlines how we should be developing this. The government received 6.9 million votes for this policy. Therefore, he has the right to implement the policy.
It only took around 2 hours after the Prime Minister discussed with the trade unions for the Indian High Commission to issue a release. An agreement was reached in 2019 with India. This government has a mantra where they keep passing the blame to the previous government, making them look clean and virtuous. But who reached into an agreement with India 3 months ago? It is included in the High Commissioner's release. India believes the Sri Lankan government will respect the agreement reached in 2019 and 3 months ago. In this case, it is very clear that we disagree with the release issued by the High Commissioner. We express our opposition to this attempt by India to interfere in our sovereignty. If we interfere with Indian affairs, will they stand by and watch? It has been revealed that there was an agreement between India and Sri Lanka. Therefore, we implore the government not to attempt to wash your hands over this issue. Has it come to a point where the leaders won't rest until a jetty or another part of the port is given to India? We ask them if they are waiting to sell one of these parts to India and obtain a commission to fulfill their own needs. If a government cannot safeguard the national assets of a country, what is the point? They are trying to give away the West Container Terminal to India to suppress the opposition voiced against the East Container Terminal. We saw the Indian High Commission asking our government to act according to the agreements they have reached. The government has to reveal the agreements they have reached during this or the previous tenure. Selling off national resources is a shameful act.
The government was vociferous on the East Terminal while focusing on the West. The trade unions affiliated to the government and the bhikkhus who work with the government enacted this drama. The government wrote a script and acted out a drama to save the ECT. So this was an act from the beginning to give away the West Container Terminal. The trade unions, several monks and those who call themselves national organizations are all part of this act.
අපි මුලින්ම කියන්න ඕනේ
Various political parties and governments can ink agreements, but that is not the aspiration of the people. If we consider the Colombo district in the western province, how many important lands have been taken over by Indian companies? The East Container Terminal is just another asset. Although the East Container Terminal of the Colombo port seems to be a business venture for India, this is a matter surrounding the country's territorial integrity. We have learned that India is eyeing the Palali airport and the Kankasanture harbour as well. What are they trying to do? They are using political parties in the central region as their allies to implement their work plan targeting lands and other matters to win their objectives. This is the situation we are facing at present. It is against such a backdrop that we are witnessing a plan to get hold of the East Container Terminal. Sri Lanka is not an ordinary nation in the face of India.
ලංකාව කියන්නේ ඉන්දියානු එළදෙනගේ කිරි බුරුල්ලෙන් බේරෙන කිරි බින්දුවක් නෙමෙයි.
India has a significant influence on the political front and also across all sectors. It consolidates in power in the northern region by taking steps to acquire the Palali airport. It also strengthens its power in the central region through political parties in the area. Further, it also establishes power in the southern region by influencing the amendment of laws and acquiring lands. Can we continue to tolerate our country being treated in this manner? We wish to emphasize that the East Container Terminal and the West Container Terminal belongs to the people of this country. Therefore, the government does not have the right to carry out a sale of public assets by promising to give either of them.
In more news, the Colombo Stock Exchange reported its biggest drop today after its benchmark all-share price index declined by approximately 6.56%.
The all-share price index dropped by 561.75 basis points. The more liquid S&P SL20 dropped by 251.77 basis points, a drop of approximately 7.32%. The Colombo Stock Exchange halted trading at 1:30 this afternoon for 30 minutes after the S&P 20 index fell below 5%. Shortly after opening, the S&P 20 index fell below 7.75%, triggering a second circuit breaker till 2:17 p.m. According to industry analysts, the decline stems after a circular was issued by the Colombo Stock Exchange last week, informing all stockbrokering firms to submit a weekly declaration on the amount of credit that has been extended to top turnover companies of the Colombo Stock Exchange. The move comes after the Securities and Exchange Commission of Sri Lanka announced that it will strengthen its regulatory measures on monitoring credit exposure undertaken by stockbrokers and dealers. Market analysts say that the subdued performance of the Colombo Stock Exchange may continue in the coming days as stockbrokers and dealers take measures to reduce their risk levels by curbing credit levels.
The US government has committed a $40 million loan to Sri Lanka's Sanasa Development Bank to support small and medium enterprises and women entrepreneurs.
The loan from the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation, the U.S. government's development bank, aims to support private sector investment and economic growth in Sri Lanka. DFC invests across sectors including energy, healthcare, critical infrastructure and technology. It also provides financing for small businesses and women entrepreneurs in order to create jobs in emerging markets, partnering with the private sector to finance solutions to most critical challenges faced by developing countries, including the Indo-Pacific region. This loan represents the DFC's first investment in Sri Lanka since its launch in 2019. The Sanasa Development Bank will use the $40 million to provide roughly 1,450 loans ranging from 5 to 10 million rupees each to small and medium-scale enterprises throughout Sri Lanka. At least 40% of those loans will be granted to businesses that are owned by women, led by women, or provide a product or service that empowers women.
Meanwhile, US Ambassador to Sri Lanka, Elena B. Teplitz, had met with the Minister of Foreign Relations, Dinesh Gunawardena, today. The Ministry of Foreign Relations, in a statement, said the discussions had centered around many topics, including diplomatic relations and the economy.
The New York-based non-governmental organization Human Rights Watch has called on the UN Human Rights Council to adopt a resolution that would scrutinize the human rights situation in Sri Lanka. The recommendation came ahead of the 46th UN Human Rights Council sessions set to begin on the 22nd of this month.
In a report published yesterday, Human Rights Watch has described the current repression of activists, journalists, lawyers and families of victims and vulnerable minorities in Sri Lanka. Accordingly, the Human Rights Watchdog called on governments to support a resolution that would advance international accountability for international crimes in Sri Lanka. It also recommended targeted sanctions and travel bans on individuals credibly accused of serious human rights abuses and violations of international humanitarian law in the country. Human Rights Watch also urged financial bodies and multilateral donors to ensure that all economic and development assistance to Sri Lanka complies with human rights guidelines. It called on Sri Lanka to cooperate with the UNHRC on a new resolution to secure evidence and probe allegations of grave human rights abuses and war crimes and to prosecute those responsible. The report also urged the Sri Lankan government to avoid adopting any recommendation by the Presidential Commission on Political Victimization which would interfere in the proper functioning of the courts, the Attorney General's office and in police investigations.
Leader of the National People's Power, Anurukumara Dissanayake, expressed his views on the report of the Presidential Commission of Inquiry that probed political victimization during an event at the Public Library Auditorium in Colombo today.
A meeting between the leaders of the government's constituent parties had been held last year. Basil Rajapaksa had taken part in the discussion. While citing that taking legal action against these individuals through the legal process is a futile exercise, he had called for a mechanism through which action could be taken against them outside the courts. The first step in this matter was the Presidential Commission that probed political victimization. It was appointed on the 29th of January 2020. The sittings of the Commission concluded on the 25th of November 2020. That is around 300 days. This commission received 1,971 complaints. They have examined 136 complaints. In addition to this, they have also taken up 14 complaints to peruse the documents. This brings the total complaints up to 150. They have investigated 150 complaints in 300 days. We wish to ask the people whether they agree on wasting public funds and setting up presidential commissions with the motive of withdrawing long-standing cases in court and were filed with charge sheets. This act challenges the judiciary as well. Ranjan Ramanayake filed a writ petition with the appeal court today seeking an interim injunction to prevent the loss of his parliamentary seat. The Attorney General and the Secretary General of Parliament have been named as respondents to the petition. The petitioner has requested the court to issue an order to the National Election Commission's Director General to refrain from taking any steps to cancel his parliamentary seat, citing that he had been convicted for contempt of court by the Supreme Court on the 12th of this month.
Taking a look back at one of our local news, the Wildlife and Nature Protection Society convened a joint media briefing in Colombo today to create awareness about environmental destruction.
It is through the Dahayagala Reserve that elephants cross over from the Udawalawa National Park to the Bogahapattiya Reserve, the 100-acre reserve, Samanalavawa and other areas using this Dahayagala elephant corridor. After the statement by the President, reservation of lands are already taking place in this area. Lands of 2 to 5 acres are being separated from this area, where you find some of the main tanks in the region, the Putupitiya Vawa, the Ranavara Palasa Vawa and the Pokunutanna Vawa. The lands around these 3 tanks are mainly being distributed as such.
The 5/2001 circular has been changed and instead the 1/2020 circular has been introduced, through which close to 700,000 forests in Sri Lanka have been made vulnerable. Accordingly, various parties have started taking over these forest areas, especially when the forest and wildlife officers go to these areas. They are made helpless. They have been forced not to enact the laws and even remove court cases which are years old. This has led to the violation of the sovereignty of the law. Through the discussion with the village program, we saw how the forest area of the Veherakadaya village in Polonnaruwa, which belongs to the Somavati Reserve, and the floodplains have been approved to be cleared.
When leading politicians use their power to obtain and destroy thousands of acres which are to be used to gazette the proposed elephant management reserve, the innocent farmers are suffering their consequences. We have reached a stage where the farmers have taken up a fast unto death, claiming the right to life. With regard to the silica sand deposits in Suduwalla, they are being mined by resident politicians. The people are finding it difficult to live there. Their houses have cracks in them. The water cannot be consumed. However, they managed to legalize their acts through environmental reports and continue to cause this damage. On our way here, we got to know that the president previously, through a discussion with the village program, ordered to release the Polonnaruwa floodplains, and by today, this reserve, which is restricted by the court, has been opened for the people to encroach.
From an 82% forest cover in 1881, the cover has been reduced to 17% as of today. But the government is saying a blatant lie by claiming that this is at 29.6%. Through the 2/2006 circular, former President Mahinda Rajapaksa, once he came into power, reclaims forest areas which were previously made reserves. As an extension to this circular, today President Gotabaya Rajapaksa is releasing other state forests to the jurisdiction of the Pradeshia Sabhas and district secretariats, which means the decisions made by the previous rulers for 30 to 40 years to conserve the forests of this country have been overturned. Then what does it say in the Vistas of Prosperity and Splendor policy document? At least in 20 pages, they talk about how minerals will be used in the construction industry, how they will combat the sand racketeers, how to increase the forest cover, and how to create an environment for sustainable development in the country. But what is happening now? In the very first cabinet decision, they decide to make room for the sand smugglers instead of suppressing them.
Cabinet approval has been granted to lease over 2,750 acres in the historic Rambakanoya zone to cultivate maize. According to the cabinet decision, these lands are those which come under the purview of the Sri Lanka Mahaweli Authority and do not fall under any reserve. The proposal is submitted for the allocation of the relevant plots of land under lease for a period of 1 year to recognize local investors and to grant those relevant plots of land to the investors on long-term lease subject to the provisions of Crown Lands Ordinance depending on the progress of cultivation. In December last year, authorities began clearing out the catchment area at the south end of the Ramakanoya adjoining the Pollebadda village, falling under the purview of the Mahaoya Pradeshya Sabha. This was met with heavy opposition from the populace. Indigenous communities in Pollebadda also opposed the move.
We have gotten to know that the cabinet has granted approval by now. We cannot believe the president and prime minister are engaging in such shameful tasks. Kill us if you have to.
මේ අනුව කලන්නේ මේ ඇත්තන්නේ පරම්පරා පුජ්‍යයක බව. මේ ඇත්තන්නේ පරම්පරා පුජ්‍ය මිනිග්ගජු ජීවත් පුත්තන මන්දෝ වෙච්ච බිම් පුජ්‍යවල්. මෙහෙම තීරණයක් මන්දෝ කරගෙන තිබෙනවා නම් මේ මහහූර්ලා මේතන ගැන කල්පනා පුජ්‍ය මන්දෝ කරලා මේ කැලා පුජ්‍යවල් විනාශතන මන්දෝ කරන්න කොදෝවිලා මේ කැලා පුජ්‍යවල් තව තැනමක් වැඩි තැන මන්දෝ කරන්න.
තමන් ගත්ත ණයෙන් බේරෙන්න ඉඩම් ටික වනාන්තර ටික.
This is merely an attempt to sell off all our natural resources to multinational companies and other nations. We do not understand how they are attempting to develop the nation in this manner.
A reservoir has been constructed obstructing the Ramakanoya, which is a tributary of the Mundeniyaru. Historic reports also suggest that a reservoir existed in the area in the past. Various quarters also question if the lands which are being handed out for the cultivation of maize would eventually be utilized for other causes.
Their intention is not only to cultivate. In another year or so, hotels will be constructed. Other large-scale projects will also be implemented.
And that's a wrap of this edition of Primetime News. For the Newsfirst team, I am Azra Hassan with our sign language interpreter for tonight, Brian D. Cruz. Thank you very much for joining us. Take care and good night.